Okay, welcome back, everybody. We saved the best for the last. So, for our final segment today, I will have my colleague Saurabh, who is a partner in Deloitte. We'll sit down and discuss with somebody whom I have great regards for, Mr. KRS Jamwal. So, Saurabh, over to you.
Thanks, Amar. It is a matter of pride and pleasure to introduce Mr. Jamwal, who is an executive director with Tata Industries. And he comes with so much of wisdom, knowledge, intellect that I'll let him speak more about his experiences as we go ahead. But the topic of conversation today between us would be more on industry perspectives, how AI has been transforming it. We'll touch upon various of his experience because he has worked across the sector, right from auto, and by the way, being from a mining school to doing data mining now, such a kind of variety and volume he brings. Has worked across sectors like auto, hotel, flight catering, and in the recent times in advanced materials to advanced analytics. So, Mr. Jamwal, welcome, and it's a matter of pride for us that you are here with us. Why don't we start with a little bit from your side on your long, a little bit of a twisted journey, and then we can take it forward.
Thank you, Saurabh. Pleasure to be here, and those are very kind words. In terms of the twisty journey, I'll say this, that while for my part, I think the only credit I would give to myself is a willingness to relearn, unlearn, reskill at every stage. But the bigger credit is to people who, at various points in time in my life, saw some potential and chose to bet on that potential. I think especially the stint I did with Tata Sons and then moved to Tata Industries, I credit Mr. Tata to taking a bet, Mr. Ratan Tata, on taking a bet on me at a time when my only experience was with one sector of the Tata Group, which was hotels. And as Saurabh said, hotels and flight kitchen. And while I had done strategy for the Taj Group, I had not done it on the scale of the group which he expected when I worked with him. And it was a tremendous learning experience. So if you ask me, the goodwill of people who saw something in me and luck probably had more to do with my twisty journey, which brought me here and gave me an opportunity to build some interesting businesses, which include Tata CliQ. I hope lots of you have used Tata CliQ and Tata CliQ Luxury. That was a journey in itself. Tata Health, which we've now merged with 1MG, where we tried to use a lot of not just advanced analytics, but even some form of AI. Our vision was that we should have a AI doctor that can work 99% as well as at least a GP. So yes, twisty journey. I credit other people who gave me the opportunities and luck for the twisty journey. I just showed a willingness to learn or relearn.
Yep. Thank you. So, learning, relearning, skilling, upskilling, I think the current generation has to go many, many times, I believe. So it's a good inspiration because in your generation, seldom we found this kind of variety. So I'll come to more on how it has evolved. So we had platforms, connectivity. That used to be the first phase, what we can call as in the world of entertainment and connectivity. How do you see the next phase as we go ahead?
It's a good question, Saurabh. 10 years ago or 12 years ago when I moved from Tata Sons to Tata Industries, and the difference was in Sons, you are the holding company and you're looking at strategy for all the big businesses, and I worked with Mr. Tata on some large things like the Investment Commission, US India CEO Forum. From there, I moved to Tata Industries, which was only about incubating next generation Tata businesses. And I hope Tata CliQ will be one of those. And I needed to peer into the future, like you're asking me to do now, and see what do I think is the big thing for the next 10 years. And I must say I was fortunate that I thought in around 2011, 12, 13, that platforms are going to be extraordinarily disruptive. Now think back to yourself in 2011 or 12. You had heard of this thing called Amazon. Flipkart was just beginning to do stuff, but most of us thought that they were, doing bait and switch or giving deals for pen drives, which were artificially cheap. But what I thought would happen is that I thought these platforms have a potential to transform the world, and that's why Tata Health was an effort to build a platform. Tata CliQ was a build a platform. That's what I saw 10 years ago. I looked at AI from 7 or 8 years ago quite deeply, but at that stage it didn't strike me as likely to be so disruptive. But today I think differently, and it's entirely because of what's happened in the last 5 years. Entirely because of what's happened in the last 5 years. In fact, I remember in around 2013 or 14, I met a very senior professor in MIT called Tommaso Poggio. If you look him up, he's one of the greatest people in AI. In fact, his students started DeepMind and Mobileye, and there was a third one. So his postdoc students were the guys who did the most disruptive stuff because they learned from him. And he, while being tremendously positive, he had spent a lifetime in AI, told me that he thinks the next big thing is when the AI can begin to learn like a child. And I thought, wow, that's going to take a lot of effort. But it was a fascinating hour or two I spent with him. Some of the things I see today happening with Transformers, finally are giving me that aha moment that this is going to be very disruptive in the next 10 years. You're just seeing the beginning of it.
True.
So I had 3 or 4 slides. I don't know if your colleagues have them. I just want to show you what's happened in the last 15 years in terms of AI. And what I felt for platforms 10 years ago, and touch wood, it has proven to be true because today you have platforms for everything. I feel that way about AI for the next 10 years.
Yep. And, coming to that point, I think the way it has evolved, now we are not only talking about the learned, skilled AI, but also something that can get into things like common sense, things like what you told us. There was a meeting I had with Mr. Jamwal where we discussed about what are the areas of the brain that AI can map. I believe we can put that slide if possible. Yeah.
Sure. This is the first slide. So, if you look back 15 years ago or so, and I've just tried to put a representation of some of the things that you credit your brain with. And for that, look on your left. And what computers or AI always has, no fatigue, mass compute, multitasking. That's something a computer can do. But we always thought that as human beings, we have creativity, we have consciousness, we have rationality and common sense, we have curiosity and emotional intelligence. And of course, we have learned skills. So if you go to the next slide, this is what started happening in 2007. If you remember, that was the time when AlphaGo, a few years before that, the best AI beat the world chess champion. That's what I call learned skills. And, I put a sort of legend at the bottom which says, what is AI capable, what is AI incapable, and what is faking it effectively. Which means, when you look at the output, you won't be able to tell whether there is a human or AI behind it. So that's what I call faking it effectively. It's not that it's really as good as a human. So that was 2007. By 2012, learned skills, AI was far better. It could play not just chess or Go, it could play 200 other games, and that kept increasing. And that's the thing about any technology like this. Every year adds to the previous year. Now, if we move to 2000, another 5 years, if you look at 2017, things haven't changed that much, but the learned skills have gone firmly into the green, better than human beings. On any learned skill, you can train an AI to be far better than a human being. But here's what Transformers has done. That's what Transformers has done in 5 years. The paper on Transformers came out in 2017. And trust me, this is a fairly honest representation of where I see AI today. It can fake many of the things that a human being claims are unique to human beings. And remember, this is today. And if you look at the trajectory of things moving, it's not going to stay here.
Yep.
It's going to progress. On each of these, think of thousands of the most intelligent minds working to progress this. And then you'll realize the potential that lies behind AI today, and which is why from looking at platforms as disruptive in 2012, in 2022, I think in the next 10 years, AI is going to disrupt all our lives, all our businesses. And it's going to be, hopefully, a lot of fun. So that's my last slide to show the delta between, in just 15 short years, there was one more slide.
Yep, we can go to next.
In just 15 short years, you went from just making a beginning in AI's learning the skills to today you have Transformers especially, which can generate artwork, which you will say is as good as a human artwork. They're beginning to generate text. There are startups in the US and soon in India also, which will give you marketing emails, which will be better than an average marketer would write for your product or for your company. They'll give you content for your company blog, which would be as good as what a content writer would write. And that's where the creativity piece comes in. And of course, there are some AIs which are faking consciousness. So, and this is a bit troubling, where in the US, people are actually given reams of video, audio, and text from one of their loved ones, and the AI can effectively fake as if you are still in conversation with your loved one. Now that has a whole lot of ethical and emotional issues attached to it. But it is unstoppable in my view. It's reached a tipping point. And to me, the reason why Transformers is so important is, and by the way, that's not the movie. I said this to a reporter one day. She was asking me, she said, what do you think is the next big thing in technology? Just 6 months ago. So I said, well, actually, I really love Transformers. She said, oh, I love Transformers too. So I said, then she looked at me and says, we're not talking about the same Transformers. So I said, no, we're probably not. Transformers has given me that aha moment where the output is a significant delta over what you'd expect given the input. And ever since talking to people like Tommaso Poggio, I was always looking for that. Because AI till now was always some amount of brute force in the background. There was a whole lot of labeling, there was a whole lot of data collection and labeling and training data. And based on all that humongous amount of work, you got decent outcomes. But Transformers is where you give it the entire Wikipedia to read, and it's able to give you sensible sentences and text after that.
Yep. So after this deep cognitive analysis of cognitive technologies, maybe and your correlation between something like a Tata CliQ to Transformers, you touched upon a point that we need to be careful, because if AI is going to fake being conscious or being emotional, it has its own challenges. So that is a related point we all are discussing as professionals in this domain. People are a little bit concerned as well, is how does the legal framework or the ethical framework for a trustworthy AI will fall in place? As we are discussing today, the industry trends and how industry is adopting AI. Any views around frameworks which are around maybe regulating AI better?
Firstly, that's a very appropriate question to ask of any new technology. And being a person who likes technology for what it can do for human beings, my answer may not satisfy you or all of you, because I know Deloitte aligns closely to regulations and regulators. But where science and technology is concerned, regulation I've found, and this is just a fact or what I've noticed, regulation always lags progress. And that's both good and bad, and without putting a value judgment on it, it's reality. You will always have technology outpacing people's ability to understand and regulate it. The good outcome of that is that you will never have a stranglehold or stop a good technology from developing. The negative outcome is that sometimes the bad actors or the misuse of the technology is the first time people start regulating it.
Yeah.
If you notice, the whole cry for regulating Bitcoin has happened because of the FTX fiasco. Though many of us knew that there's lots of scams going on, like many of us knew that Bitcoin is not really a currency. Sorry, I'm venturing far afield here. But for a team like Deloitte, that Bitcoin is not really a currency. It's not a backed by any government. So I think there'll be attempts to regulate. But what heartens me is when I look at AI, you have this project called the Big Science Project, which is already being set up. And one of the transformer platforms called Hugging Face is actually supporting it. So you have thousands of AI folks who form the network, and the other word for transformers is large language models. So they're going to set up a large language model only for research. And they're going to check on all the misuse or the bad things that can happen out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the good part is, I think over the last 100 years, civil society has advanced so much that there's always a segment of civil society that automatically says, oh, this is a great new technology. We are practitioners of this technology. It is our responsibility to also then make sure that we are making that the technology is being used for the right purposes, and to caution people on things like bias, because everybody who's done modeling knows that if you have bias in the model, your outcomes and output is going to be problematic.
Yep, certainly, and not only having a legal framework, but also something which is more like a basic framework to regulate AI within the organization is also catching up. So, with that concern mitigated to some extent, and technology leapfrogging at a rapid pace, industry is adopting AI. I mean, there are so many use cases people are implementing. They are very interested to upskill, but still, there is some kind of difficulty to assess how do we get started. So in your view, what would be a few low-hanging fruits that industry can today look at and maybe get started or get running?
Oh, several. Because of doing platforms for the last 10 years, the immediate low-hanging fruits that I would say anybody can get started is search. Everybody who has a website or a platform like Tata CliQ has a search functionality. These large language models are going to significantly enhance, whether it's a Deloitte website or a XYZ website or a platform website, it's going to significantly enhance the training of the search engine. When we put up our platforms, we used to have a cold start problem. We used to have a lot of need for training data. We had to start putting weights on certain words to make sure that the intent of the person doing a search was reflected in the results. I think things like search are going to become much easier. So I'm just telling you the sort of immediate first order applications search, generating text, some of the examples I gave earlier of, whether it's marketing emails, sales emails, any text which doesn't require a huge amount of creativity. So all of those I would call as first order outcomes. That's what large language models will be very quick to optimize on. Second order will be like what we were trying to do in Tata Health, which is human plus AI. You combine the AI and the human being and you get a much better output. So can you have an AI doc, and some companies other than Tata Health also already trying to do stuff in that space. Can you get a legal opinion without a human lawyer in that process?
Oh, yeah.
And that human lawyer so I call these second order, where you can generate something, but it'd be good to have a human being also participate. And then the third order, which is really fascinating, would be in where you combine text, audio, video, all which are large language models or transformers, and what you'd call a sort of multimodal transformer. And that would have application in robotics, right? So you would have a robot that can understand the context. You can put it into a room like this. It can understand the context on its own without needing training data, by just looking around and mapping everything. And then it can interact not only physically, but also with text and video. So, that multimodal can be the most disruptive. So you'll have a very different level of robots in 10 years.
Certainly. I mean, right from age of width, we in Deloitte have that framework where it is like, it will be AI augmented decision support systems running everywhere to something which will be very autonomous. So with that thought, maybe I like to throw it open for the audience if anybody has any questions to ask. Yeah, please, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Vidya. I'm from Deloitte. The session is about transforming businesses. So my question is that AI has always been tagged with replacing humans with respect to labor or anything that is redundant that humans do. Have you ever been asked this question, and how have you countered this question, or how have you answered this question?
Yeah, very good question. I've not only been asked, it's a question I've asked myself, and I've read adequately. I won't say I'm an expert. I've read adequately in history about how each major breakthrough in technology impacted work and employment. And I have to say that there's a period of intense insecurity for certain levels of jobs and professions every time there's a new technology. I still remember in the 80s when computers started coming in, and the bank employees, at that time it was mostly PSU banks, were absolutely terrified and enraged that, how can you bring in computers? Because suddenly, if there's a computer, the myth was that if there's a computer, there's going to be no need for human beings in the bank. The interesting part is banks still employ thousands of people, but with a different skill level. And I think what every technological advance forces a higher skill level. And remember, people who are young adapt to that skill level shift very quickly. Now, this was fine till around 30 or 40 years ago, because typically the new technology came in when you were in your 40s or 50s. The entire next generation grew up with the next generation of technology, let's say computers. So it created trauma for a certain age band and a certain skill level. I think what I see happening, and I think Saurabh alluded to it in one of his earliest questions, was that now what you're going to happen is in a lifespan or working lifespan of 30 years, if technologies are going to rotate every 10 or 15 years, you're going to have to reskill not once in your career, maybe twice, maybe thrice. I think safety nets are important. And I think it's because folks in Silicon Valley saw some of this stuff happening that I If you remember 2 years ago, there was a lot of talk about giving everybody a minimum wage. And America has always been violently against this whole concept of minimum wage, though many countries in Europe have that.
Yeah.
But I think Silicon Valley, especially because it sees the disruptive technology early, start talking about this minimum wage concept, whether you're working or not. So you have to have some kind of safety nets. I don't see any other option. And ideally, those safety nets should be more from a retraining, reskilling perspective than a minimum basic income, which is what Silicon Valley wanted to propagate. I don't think India can afford a minimum basic income, though we are doing it at a very basic level. But we can't do it at a much higher level. But I think reskilling, retraining for those people who are willing to. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, just to add, it is a general perception at times that AI is a bit different from general automation of manual work. So there is a little bit of perception battle also that adoption of AI is fighting, not only on the ethical side, but also on the displacement of jobs. So do you think that maybe this assumption that maybe in banks, automation helped not only to grow, but grow really significantly, adoption of AI will be a little bit different?
I won't deny there's a risk of that, where AI may take away jobs which are slightly better paid and better educated. Mm-hmm. But then remember, bank employees and bank probationary exams were supposed to be a big ticket in the 80s to lifelong employment and a good standard of living. I think every generation feels that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a sense of having something which I'm not having today. So that's right.
The fears are I think in almost every generation. I'm not saying they should be belittled in any way. I think they should be addressed. But I think those fears, at least in the last 4 or 5 cycles from steam engine, electricity, semiconductors, computers, I think those fears on a national or international level have never harmed or regressed society. But yes, a recession is sometimes the time when these people are most sensitive to this. Having said that, remember, almost every big disruptive technology that has crafted a space for itself, whether it was steam or electricity or semiconductors, has transformed productivity. And that productivity is actually the only way a society really changes its standard of living. Each of them transform productivity. So at the end of it, you have more output for the same number of people, for the same population. And I think AI can do a lot in changing productivity. I don't know if many of you are aware, but many of the Western countries, especially America, have been bemoaning the fact that in the last 20 or 30 years, despite the advent of the internet, productivity growth, which used to be in the US between 2 to 3% per year, has been sub 1% for the last 20, 30 years. So people are saying, what's going on? We got the internet, we got WhatsApp, we got Instagram and Facebook, but productivity has not grown. Or maybe I've answered the question.
Yeah. So maybe AI is a booster.
I hope so.
So that will improve productivity by leaps and bounds.
I hope so.
Anyone else? Hello. Yeah, Jyotisko.
Okay. So you talked about a group of ML professionals who have come together. They are using transformer-based solutions to monitor different types of, whether there are bad actors, whether some people are misusing ML.
Now, no, what they're doing is they're creating a model which will be available for everybody to run experiments to show this is how it can be biased, this is how it can be, it can give out wrong information. So I don't think they're tracking who the bad actors are. They're tracking the technology and how that technology can be distorted to
okay, so
negative users.
They might be giving the solution as an open source.
Yes.
Okay, that answers.
For that community.
You
have to be a researcher in that space to know how to operate it.
Okay. I mean, my thought is that when it comes to governance, I mean, I myself have been a data scientist. I mean, it's been 16 years in this space. I'm myself very scared what models we are building, whether it'll, learn wrongly. I have so many alerts in it.
There's not only bias, there's drift. There are so many types of drift.
Yes.
But,
So
it's called the Big Science Project. Read about it. Yeah. And in fact, I'd like to hear your opinion on if anything they are doing wrong, because I was quite impressed. It's called the Big Science Project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there is some sense of academic assurance, which is also building in parallel to academic excellence in the AI domain. So we have to balance both the sides, because ultimately any model that you are building should not only be tested for biases, but there has to be an assurance right at the outset of design and implementation. So anyway, things are going to happen.
But go ahead if you had a further question.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that since the governance is hardly there except in the banking industry, I mean, we do have a little bit of governance in the banking industry when it comes to AI. So what this community is building, can there be a model to use that in various industries to monitor AI? If it is open, I mean, that's what I was thinking. Now it's only restricted to that community, then it's a different thing.
You see, what they're trying to do is bring out all the risks in that technology of large language models. But like I said, technology adoption always outpaces efforts to regulate. So you can go onto the net and you can go to stability.ai or Stable Diffusion and you can start generating images as a lay user. Now, will those images have a bias as a lay user? You never know. But I believe there are almost 1,000 researchers who are part of this project. And at least they'll be able to point out vulnerabilities and maybe even guardrails that should be put around large language models. Let's see. All I'm saying is the reason I brought this up was, unlike something like, in most of the other or earlier technological advancements, you rarely had civic society that was so activist that they would form a group of intelligent practitioners to flag the risks. Most of the time, the practitioners were the biggest cheerleaders and sort of said, we must do this and we must give electricity to all, etc., etc. So that's why I remarked on it. I found it a positive development.
Yeah. I think a combination of efforts between civil society, government, industry, or maybe academia, I think that combination will evolve. Maybe we'll have a regulator someday for AI.
Very likely.
We do have for insurance and other sectors. Anyone else?
I
Please.
had a question in a similar vein. I'm Nidhi from Wells Fargo. And the Tata Industries has been so much a part of the fabric of Indian society and have done such tremendous work in the social sector as well. And when we talk about, removing the bias from AI, my question is a little more philosophical. Can we also rely on AI to help remove the biases in society? Right? There are so many groups that are underrepresented in terms of the data about them, about their, for example, women's health-related issues for which there is very limited data, the design of cars, which also ignored a lot of, the physiology and the size of women. So what are your thoughts around where AI can take us to a less biased society?
Firstly, thank you for the kind words about the Tata Group and Tata Trusts. There the challenge is, at the end of it, AI is still a tool. And that's why I was talking about the Big Science Project, because those researchers are trying to figure out the vulnerabilities of the tool. But at the end of it, whoever feeds in the data or gives the directions to the AI will still define the output. You will not have, or I don't think human beings are going to allow self-directed AI to sort of operate. So I think your challenge is to society to get rid of biases. And I think we should try very hard for that. But AI is not going to, well, it may at the margin help or hinder. But no, I tend to believe that biases come from society, and it's up to us as society to remove those biases. And it takes time.
Yep.
So it's decades of training of people's instincts and impulses that you have to sort of retrain them to be what we call ourselves as civil society. Sorry, I can't claim that AI is going to give you a solution there.
So maybe in the interest of time, we'll take one more question before
Sure.
this nugget of wisdom that society cannot outsource removal of bias to AI. Maybe society has to take responsibility of managing AI better. So maybe last question, someone.
Sure. Hello, sir. This is Ashish from JP Morgan. First of all, really hearty to listen an industry leader talk so much in detail about LLMs, transformers, and all, and the big science project. So my question is this, right? So very interesting slides. You depicted that the final frontier is basically when the models reach capabilities in curiosity and consciousness, right? But to my mind, it is very difficult to effectively say if a model is faking consciousness or if it has actually reached a point where it is conscious. So my question is to you, what are those sort of tests that you would think about to say the model or any large language model or a combination of large models, so to say, has reached a point where it is actually conscious or has reached human curiosity?
Excellent question. And my answer is going to not satisfy you at all. Because what's going to happen is, AI is going to make us think very deeply on how we define consciousness. So before we start applying it to AI, we are going to have to start asking ourselves, what is consciousness? And it's perhaps going to lead to a deeper understanding of what it is about us that makes us human, or perhaps better or worse than an AI. But what is consciousness is going to become a very big question in the next 10 years, in my view. Because for exactly this reason, you're going to have to start saying, yes, these responses from the AI are exactly what I would think a human being does. But it's not an AI because it's not conscious. And then the question comes, what is consciousness? So it's going to result in a lot of fascinating debate on what makes us human beings and what is consciousness.
Yep. So maybe we discussed about physiology of brain. We discussed about psychology of biases, and we are ending with philosophy of how AI should be regulated. At that note, maybe thank you, Mr. Jamwal.
My pleasure.
DJ, over to you.
Thank you.